Today's topic is The Upswing, remarkable book that is receiving acclaim, and P.S. was written before COVID, before the 2020 election. We may ask you a little bit about that. But I love the idea that this is a co-authored book, if I may, reflecting the sensibilities of two life stories, of two kinds of training, of two ways of writing, of two generations. And so could I ask you to sort of summarize the arc of the book for the audience, not everybody's read it, and maybe say how you came to work together on it. And Shaylyn, I'll start with you.
Sure. So Bob and I have a long working relationship. It's been about 20 years that we worked together in various capacities. And so we keep in touch about all the projects that he's working on. And I remember, goodness, it was probably about 5 years ago, we had dinner together, my husband and his wife, and we all got together, and Bob started talking about these graphs. Bob has a, there they are. Bob has a hobby of tinkering with obscure data sets late into the night. And in doing this, he had discovered this remarkable series of graphs that all had the same shape. And they were these very disparate fields and disparate concepts, but they were all, over a very long period of time, tracking the same trajectory. And he was toying around with what this meant, and his agent at the time was calling it 5 graphs in search of a story. And it turns out I'm a storyteller, and so eventually I became part of this team to sort of put a story around this remarkable, really breathtaking data-driven summary that Bob had stumbled across.
Well, that's a completely true story. I had finished a book called Our Kids, which was actually the subject of this debate between me and Charles and other people. And I had promised Rosemary that that was my last book. And, well, there's been a little tittering of laughter here. That's what everybody who knows us said. He doesn't really mean it. But I really meant it. And we were off in England and at Oxford, Nuffield College for a semester, but I began thinking about what the history of trends in, well, I knew what the long-run history of trends, I mean, over the last 125, 150 years, trends in social capital, that's social connections, that's my jargon for talking about social connections. And I had vaguely known that there was a similar trend, actually, for economic inequality, although I didn't know very much about it. Then, while I was there on this, 2 or 3 months we were there, I guess, a sabbatical, I stumbled into some other people who were really focused on politics, and they told me there was a very similar graph for political polarization. And as Shaylyn said, I'm a data person, and so I sort of thought that's unlikely to be accidental. And then somebody in one of the audience, I was, the way you do as you're an academic, you give presentations on half-baked ideas, your own half-baked ideas, and I was giving a seminar on this set of half-baked ideas, and somebody in the audience said, you don't know it, but there's a similar trend with respect to culture. I couldn't even imagine how you could measure culture, and maybe we can get to that in a moment later on. But this person said, you ought to try this new technique for measuring cultural changes. And this person said, and I bet when you do that, you're going to find that the trend is this same kind of strange U-shaped curve. And that, I'm now trying to shorten a longer thing that took several years, but I became convinced that I was right about, and I am now convinced, I'm not always convinced that I'm right about everything, but I am convinced that I'm right about this, that the data are, and I'll tell you more than you want to hear about the data. The data are right. This is really for these 4 trends that are very clear and very hard to explain and very important, I thought. But now Shaylyn's story comes in. She's right. Rafe Segalin, my longtime agent, said to me just what she said. Bob has got 4 graphs in search of a story. And then Rafe happened to know both of us, and he said, why don't the two of you get together? And we did, and now you have the book.